go straight into the video?
Let's do it. Right.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's David Penney. I am CMO at UCAS.
And I'm Chris. I'm the head of strategy at an agency called Borne.
And so what we wanted to do was talk to you about those emotionally fueled moments that make those connections. As I'm CMO of UCAS, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the emotional moments that we create for students. We have a relationship with half of the population by the time they're 30. And I know I work for a brand that has a lot of emotional moments, because whenever I tell someone I work for UCAS, they instantly play back their UCAS story to me. And sometimes that's a great story because they've accepted and everything's gone great, and then sometimes I feel like I'm a post-results trauma counsellor as they tell me all of their awful moments that happen. But whatever I do, I know that UCAS has lots of emotional moments charged at it. And I guess what we think we are is a guide, and we help people make one of the most consequential decisions that they're ever going to make in their life, and perhaps their first big decision as a young adult. And so UCAS is really a framework which takes you from that little spark in your mind of, I want to be this thing, I want to do that, who do I want to be as an adult? We take you from that moment all the way to when you get into the car with your parents. You've got £2,000 worth of stuff in there that your parents and you have funded together, and you head off to university, and that scary moment when your parents say goodbye, and that first moment when you meet someone in halls. And those are the types of moments that we'll remember forever. And we think, as UCAS, that we're creating those moments, that there are massive opportunities to work with brands and create moments with them. And what we really want to do is talk about how we can do this with much more purpose, because at the end of the day, UCAS is actually, we're not a government department. Lots of people think I work for a government department. I don't. We're not owned by universities. We're actually an independent charity. So what we do is we provide that information, advice and guidance independently of government and university for students. And the moments we create are packed full of emotion. So writing that personal statement has lots of emotion attached to it. The emotion of, oh my God, I have to, for the first time, express myself in 4,000 characters, to actually doing that personal statement gives you purpose and clarity that you're actually doing the right thing. Or the media ecosystem that we've created. So when you come along to a UCAS exhibition and you meet a university for the first time, there's that emotion of, I don't know what question to ask, to actually I made a connection and I can take that big next step. And finally, the biggest moment, which is our Christmas Day, which is Results Day in England, where around about 350,000 students wake up at 8 o'clock and they get that big moment, which is either they're in or they get that perhaps that first big rejection for them in their life. Actually, when you think about A-level Results Day, it is one of the biggest financial transactions that happens in the whole of the UK, because at that moment, 350,000 times £27,000, which is about what the fees, suddenly that financial transaction happens. So in terms of what we do as UCAS and what is the formula for UCAS, as I said, we're a charity. Most of what we do is independent fundraising in terms of working with commercial brands. That's about 50% of our brand. And data is what fuels us, that relationship we have and that ability to get the trust of young people. They tell us that they trust us with their data more than the high street bank and equal with the NHS. We have a relationship with 1.5 million of them every year, and we are more and more wanting to work with brands that absolutely drive into our charitable purpose. And at the heart of our charity and what we're registered to do is to support progression and student success. So that is, if you're a brand that is interested in progression and student success, then we definitely want to talk to you. And what we mean by that is we really want to set students up for success at university. And the most read section on UCAS.com after the personal statement and the deadlines page is a page called a guide to everything you need to take to university. So you can see just how curious students are when they're heading to university. What are the right brands that are going to support them as they progress? And the way I think about that is how you succeed at university just isn't down to what you study. It's down to the friends you make, the experiences you have, the clubs and societies that you join, the meals that you cook with when you're learning to cook in your halls of residence, that type of thing. And there is a challenge and an opportunity for brands to make really, really positive impact with setting students up for success. And we think that is about UCAS bringing out the best with brands and doing it in a really purposeful and meaningful way. So we're committed to student success. How can you be a part of that as well?
So the other thing I think is really interesting about UCAS, and it's kind of why I'm on the stage as a strategist in a creative agency context, is that it represents some really fascinating opportunities for brands. And we've been working with UCAS recently to start telling this story to more marketers, more agencies, because historically UCAS has really good relationships within the context of higher education, but not many brands have worked with them. And I think part of the ambition is to find new partners to introduce to students, to create these partnerships that can offer students a really positive choice. So I wanted to talk about three things I think are fascinating about this moment, about headed to university, the pathway into adulthood. So I have a penchant for quoting very clever people like Richard Shotton, and one of the gifts that he's given to my industry beyond some of the behavioural economics and neuroscience work that he does is with a study that he did at Zenith, looking at life stages. So in our lives we have big moments like getting married or buying a house or starting a new job. And there was a brilliant piece of research that looked at the impact of going through these major moments of adult life on our relationships with brands. And the ultimate finding was that the probability of trying a new brand in the midst of a major life event increases by about 75%. And that makes sense. And it's partly because when we go through those things, we start shopping new categories, so we need different stuff. But it's also because it is an emotionally fueled time. When we're having a baby, when we're buying a house, we're starting a new job, everything is up for grabs. Our feelings go a little bit haywire. We start encountering problems that we haven't had. We start encountering brands that might help to fix them in a way that we haven't looked for them before. Now, the fascinating thing about life stages, and there are some categories that are massively aligned to them, like if you sell mortgages, for example, is that different people experience those moments at different times. But university happens to the same cohort at the same time within the same journey every year. Similarly, if we're thinking about targeting different life stages, there is no single place to be able to reach those people in the midst of that life stage. And there is in the context of going to university, which in the context of this research was the first major moment that many of us, about half the population, experience. In fact, in any given year, more people start university than get married or buy a house. So the volume of people that are experiencing this moment is extraordinary. Now, the reason I think that's really fascinating for brands is that you are showing up in a time then where everything is being renegotiated, where we have people who are becoming grown-ups, who are making decisions, who are learning a sense of agency and independence, who are governing their own finances, who are learning that they really don't know how to cook. All of these things are being discovered by students, and it gives a huge opportunity to show up in the context of those moments. So we think that's a really fascinating thing about thinking about students as an audience and accessing this very major life moment. This is one of my favourite ads because it speaks to how advertising work, and also because my first client in advertising was Nissan, and this ad used to wind me up immensely. But we know that this is how brands work. We know brand building is about talking to the vast majority of people who are not currently shopping your brand. We also know through every wonderful piece of work done by Ehrenberg Bass or by Binet and Field that brands work by making an emotional connection. by creating enduring memories, and by building long-term desire, so that by the time we are potentially in market for a Porsche, it influences the buying decision. Brand building starts early. One of the really fascinating things I think about the era that we live in with data-led and algorithmically led media is that the risk of that, it starts to become a bit of a walled garden for finding brands that aren't necessarily for us in that moment. Students are malleable. They're thinking about brands. They're thinking about their decisions that they're making, but also they are in a life stage which is fundamentally about the kind of life I would like to have. So it's a fascinating time to be encountering an audience who are considering where they're going and to make a connection that potentially lasts, to build a memory that endures, so that as they grow and as they follow that path and as they become the person that they're hoping to become, they have a connection with a brand that has very much sort of been built in the long term. The other thing that's really interesting about what happens when we start university is that we start having to make decisions in some categories that we haven't before, like bank accounts that are very sticky. So I think YouGov research suggests that 3 out of 5 Brits have had their bank account for more than 10 years. Much like you, still complaining about that student account that you've got. But there are use cases for brands, I think, entering these moments that mean that they can build a relationship that is incredibly enduring, or indeed you can create this sort of emotional connection with students at a point when they are thinking about that. And then the other thing I think is really fascinating about students is that by definition of a person who is transitioning into adulthood, and it presents a really fascinating opportunity for brands, is that these young people are experiencing lots of small problems along these moments. They are thinking about which laptop do I need, they're thinking about Freshers Week, they're thinking about making friends, they're thinking about what they're going to cook, they're thinking about all the stuff that gets bundled into the back of the car, but they're also thinking about, what about my physical health? What about my emotional well-being? How am I going to deal with certain things that I'm worried about encountering? And indeed, as they start university and go through that experience, they start doing things they've never done before. Now, purpose, we are a week after Cannes. I'm sure everyone has been following the sort of LinkedIn literati banter around the end of purpose. But the truth is that the world needs purposeful brands. It just doesn't need karma offsetting. Any interaction with a young person in the midst of this moment is purposeful by definition, because we are talking about an audience that is worried about stuff or trying stuff or has a problem. And they're using products to solve them. Brands live inherently in the context of these moments. When we're thinking about the first time I've cooked for my flatmates, a brand is there. When we're thinking about I'm trying to find some space to be able to study and relax, a brand is there. And the third thing we think is fascinating about thinking about these life moments and building these enduring relationships is that brands have an opportunity to come and solve a problem, not in a way that is completely adjacent to their product, but through the lens of that product. And I love this example from Hellman's Ogilvy and Google this year. A really simple piece, I'm not sure it's not simple to make, but simple conceptually, piece of technology where I scan my fridge and it looks at what's in my fridge and it tells me what I can make with it. Brilliant central role for the product. Everything is better with mayonnaise. A fundamental truth, I think. But also really, really useful for a student audience potentially who are worried about wasting money or wasting food, because we know that this generation is very environmentally conscious. So we're sort of fascinated by the extent to which brands can come and help these students in the midst of these moments to solve these small problems, and to do it in a way that is both purposeful but has a really clear role for the products, because that is how young people are thinking about them. So that was what we wanted to talk about today, is to think about students differently, to think about the benefit of that big life moment, the point at which young people sort of emerge into adulthood, the propensity of trialing brands within the context of life moments and our ability to reach them. This idea that if we're going to build relationships and build brands over the long term, then this is a pretty good place to start. And also to pose this question, what kind of problems could we solve? And so our sort of final image that we want to leave with you, apart from this very determined pony, to fix that in your mind and create that enduring memory, is this question. Imagine what we could do for young people. And I think we're here to talk about fortune favouring the bold, and thinking about the hundreds of thousands of young people that this summer will be headed off to university and emerging into that moment of adulthood. How could we be better partners to them? How could we solve problems, and how could we build brands with them? That's what we want to say. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you both. So it turns out the question app is actually broken, hence why there's been no questions today. But if anyone else has a question in the room they'd like to do, please raise an arm. You've got off scot-free. Lucky you.
Beautiful, easy pass.
Your student debt is vanished. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.